it. So before we get to the Washburn N4, let's talk about the origins of how we got to the Washburn N4. What were you playing before that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. No, listen, what was I playing before that? Probably not much before that. I had a Kramer at one point that got stolen, and then I've said before in the past, my family, we didn't have a lot of money. I was the youngest of 10 kids, a lot of musicians. It was amazing, but I never had my own guitar, so I couldn't afford it. So whenever I'd go to Wurlitzer in Massachusetts, in Worcester, Massachusetts, I used to get kicked out of that place for just wanting to like try all these guitars I couldn't afford. These, Strats and Les Pauls and Kramers, all sorts of guitars at the time. Charvels, Jacksons, and used to dream about, man, one day I'll own one of these things. And after being thrown out for the 50th time on my way out that day, I saw like a bin, like a plastic bin of just parts, and one was a lefty neck that nobody bought for a long time, and they were all made out of Warmoth parts. So there was body with no paint, nothing as raw as you'll probably see today, and I was just like, how much for these? And they were super cheap, so got them, put them together, and that was the beginnings of the N4. I took it to a friend of mine, Jim Meradian, who we have a history with, and which is how I met Pat, who worked in this guitar shop, which was really interesting. And I just told him to take, I don't know, about that much, a couple inches off the whole body, because I'm not like you. I'm not the Hulk. I'm kind of Robin in Batman, not Batman, but and that was it. It was born. It was just no paint because it was just, that's how they came. Couldn't afford to get it painted. Didn't want to get it painted. I kind of liked that it was wood. And at that time, we're talking 80s, right? So it was the opposite of wood guitars. Everything was fluorescent greens and pinks and reds. All the Vi guitars that were coming out, all the gems, everything. And yeah, so that's basically where it started, was just from parts of affordability in a music store.
Right. Okay, and then Washburn comes into the picture, right? And I'm sure at that point you probably had a good pick of who you wanted to go to, because there was a lot of praise around your playing in '89 with the first Extreme record. You've had some offers probably, but how'd you stumble with Washburn?
Nobody cared, by the way. Nobody cared.
Really?
After the first album, I didn't get calls from anybody. As a matter of fact, I didn't even think about it, because I never knew that you could do endorsements and stuff like that. I was in, my own world, and I didn't know. I know people, I figured, if you saw anybody clap them playing guitar, it was just they played the guitars they wanted. And I didn't know that the company would reach out. But I remember like the first album, there was Washburn rep reached out to me, and he said, listen, and called back in the day, back in the 1900s, as I always say, where literally, like, my mom handed me, the curly cord on the phone and stretch it all the way until it goes, like, somebody's on the phone for you. And they said, look, my rep there said you're a great guitar player, wanted to talk to you about us, working together. And I was confused, like, what do you mean working together? Like, yeah, we make you a guitar, we give you guitars to use. And I'm like, and I said, but I don't want any guitars. I like the guitar that I'm playing. And they said, well, but maybe we can, do an endorsement where we have these certain models. And I was like, and the first thing I said, because, we didn't have a lot of money. So I knew I was starting to go on the road, and I used to always have summer jobs to try to make some money, and I'd give all a check to my mom, because we had a big family just to feed everybody. All of us would kind of pitch in. So I said, wait, do you pay us to play these guitars? He goes, no, nobody pays anybody to play guitars. It's just like we give you the 2 or 3 guitars and we support whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm not interested in that. And they said, but wait, he goes, yeah, it's kind of unprecedented. I go, well, look, I don't want to play any of your guitars. I want to play mine. And B, I'll do it if you give me, like, it was something crazy, like $200 a month, so I can send to my mom while I'm on tour, so she can, I can make sure, like, I still work. And they were like, okay. And I was like, well, which guitar the catalog is? I go, I want to use mine. And he goes, oh, so you want us to make the one you have, because it was out of parts and it was smaller. And I said, yes. So then when they finally did it and they looked at the guitar, they said, it's okay, so now we're going to go do some colors. What do you want? I go, I don't want any colors. I want it to be wood. And they're like, we can't do a wood body. Nobody does just a wood body. And I said, and I don't want any finish either. Oil. And they were like, nobody's going to buy these. Nobody's going to be interested in these. And I'm like, well, then we don't have a deal. I don't want to do it. and because they wanted to do all sorts of colors. And I'll never forget going out. Once they did it, they agreed to do it. I'll never forget being at the first Namm show I'd ever been to, and at the time, I mean, I remember walking into this place going like, oh, I'm in space, and seeing the massive area of just what Fender had or what Gibson had, big areas, and even Ibanez at the time was massive. Ibanez was ruling, and then when I went to the Washburn side, it was the side of what me and you are right here now, and they had a little counter, and they had like little booth, and I was just like doing a sign, and I was like, wait, you want me to do a signing? Like nobody knows who the hell I am. And I'm not sure that anybody showed up. I would just sit there with people, maybe 2 or 3 people walk by, and they're like, yeah, what's your name, whatever. And I remember walking over, and the difference, you talked about porn and graffiti coming out. And I'll never forget going back the second year, and it was completely different because now porn and graffiti's out, More Than Words have come out. And I remember walking into this place now, still seeing the massive Ibanez and everything else. But all of a sudden, I had seen wood-finished bodies in almost every guitar department and forehead exploded because of the porn graffiti and the guitar.
Nuno Bettencourt of Extreme. His guitar of choice, the Washburn M4 Signature Series. Washburn guitars. What a great guitar should be. Available at finer music dealers everywhere.
And I was just like, and my manager had sent me, I was at home in Hudson, Mass. He goes, have you read the Wall Street Journal? I said, I quit high school. I don't read the Wall Street Journal. And he goes, go get the Wall Street Journal. I'm like, why? He goes, you know how they had all those little kind of columns of different stocks? He goes, and it literally had one. He goes, look at the center one. And it said U.S. music at the time. It said, had gone up. The stock went up like 3 or 4 times what it was. And it said, Nuno Bettencourt playing, More Than Words is a hit. Nuno Bettencourt playing the guitars. And that's why the stock went up for this company. And to the point where I was like, what is going on? I had no idea what was going on until I got to Namm. And all of a sudden, we had the same size area that like they had.
Wow.
And I was like, there's a line of people. It was just really interesting to see like this punk from Hudson, Mass. Who didn't want to, didn't want any paint on or anything else. They said it would never sell the guitars. And of course, I'm a stubborn prick. So, and it worked out, man.
Hey everybody, quick reminder, if you want to show your support for the channel, and we'd love it if you would, then make sure to check out our awesome, truly sensational merchandise available at mastersofshred.com. You can choose from this awesome limited edition Crate 1990 shirt or a bunch of cool others that you won't see anywhere else. Check them out. Now back to the show.
And it was interesting to go and see, all of a sudden see other companies that were doing some wood finishes and stuff and just doing oil and not doing like even lacquer or not doing proper finishes like
That's true.
Coffee and some of that stuff. It was really cool.
The only other person I could think of that had bare wood finish, right? Maybe around that time, I'm not sure, I'll get fact checked on this, was Jason Becker with the numbers. But that was not a production model guitar till I think like Petey took a stab at it in the mid 90s, and then it got passed around like Paradise, then it hit Kiesel. So that was never a thing. But that's the only other place I've ever seen a natural guitar. So I think you are the first one.
Yeah, look, I probably, as far as production or anything, I'm sure I'm not the first one. As a matter of fact, this wasn't done on purpose. It wasn't until I used to, when we grew up, obviously through the 70s, I remember, oddly enough, there was a guitar that Joe Perry had. I think that was wood. It might even had I don't even know if it had a lefty neck or not, but people go, why is your neck upside down? It's because of Hendrix. I'm like, no, that was the neck that I could afford. Nobody would buy the lefty. There were no lefties. Lefty guitars probably still sitting in stores. Nobody buys them. Yeah. And I was just like, fuck it. I'll just put on a lefty. I was like, it's cheap. It was like $20 or something. I don't know. They couldn't get rid of it. So it's like, that's why. And then when they did the guitars, like, of course you want to go back to your normal, I was like, no. Just leave it upside down, leave it the headstocks up, and it was fine. So
I personally prefer reverse headstocks.
I always thought it was super cool, man. I thought it was super cool. But I mean, that's the gist of like, the wood and cutting the body down, and the N4 bodies, a lot of people probably don't realize, because they still are a Strat shape, that there's that much smaller all the way around than a Strat body. Because I always felt like Strats were big on me.
Right.
I wasn't a big guy, so I always felt like I wanted to fit a little bit. I want my Strat to feel like a normal Strat feels on Yngwie. because he's a giant, small, nice and small, and I can control it, you know.
Right.
So that's one knob. I remember telling him I don't want tone control. I don't want to simplify. And everybody at Washburn used to be annoyed with me because they'd always want to add things, or do colors, or do everything that everybody else was doing. I'm like, no, man, it's a workhorse. And I told him, I go, don't do a finish, because what I loved about mine is that it ages with you. So it shows you how much you play and how much you work and how much you tour and how much you sweat. Mine had blood on it from different nights and stuff. So I always thought it was really cool to have a guitar that kind of aged with you a little bit. And I didn't realize how much warmer they were without paint.
How do you pay tribute to one of the greatest guitarists from one of the greatest rock bands of all time?
Tone Arts USA proudly brings to you the ultimate addition to your shred den, the limited edition Super Halen 1x12 stack.
Draped in the pages of a vintage 1990 Van Halen comic book, the Super Halen is a showpiece that can rock like no other.
Handcrafted by Tone Arts master luthier Sam Hill, no two Super Halen amps are the same.
Each cabinet is scientifically crafted with the highest grade materials to give you that monstrous tone that will light up the sky. It's fully loaded with a 12-inch USA-made Green Beret speaker, a total upgrade from the Celestion G12M greenbacks that we've become so accustomed to.
Each cabinet is closed back just like Eddie's, but Tone Arts USA does offer an optional open back if your heart desires.
Visit www.mastersofshred.com now to reserve yours today before you can't get this stuff no more.